Welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight, we step into a story dressed in glass slippers and candlelight. A tale of cruelty, rescue, and reward. Cinderella. Most know her as a gentle girl, saved by magic, and married into happiness. But like many old stories, the version remembered today is the polished surface of something much older. Beneath the gowns and singing mice lies a tale that crossed continents, changed with every age, and once carried sharper lessons about class, power, beauty, and survival. So tonight, let us open the ashes and see what was buried there. The name Cinderella itself points to soot and labor. In many European versions, the heroine is not introduced as a princess in waiting, but as a household servant reduced to sleeping near the hearth. Covered in cinders, mocked by her family, and stripped of status, she represents a fear common through history, that a child could lose protection and be pushed downward within their own home. Long before modern welfare systems, death in the family often meant disaster. A father might remarry, property might shift. Children from earlier marriages could become rivals for inheritance. In that light, the wicked stepmother was not fantasy alone. She was a dramatic symbol of real tensions inside households, where survival, land, and favor mattered more than affection. Yet the story is older than medieval Europe. Scholars often trace one early written ancestor to ancient China around the 9th century in the tale of Ye Xian. There, a mistreated young woman receives supernatural help, attends a festival in secret, and loses a tiny golden shoe that leads to her recognition. Even earlier fragments resembling Cinderella appear in the ancient Mediterranean. In Greek tradition, there is the story of Rhodopis, a slave girl whose sandal is carried away by an eagle and dropped before a king, who then seeks its owner. These tales differ greatly, yet they share familiar bones: oppression, hidden worth, a public gathering, a lost shoe, and sudden elevation. The pattern appears so widely across cultures that many believe Cinderella was not born once, but grew wherever people told stories about injustice reversed. When the tale entered Europe in the early modern period, it became darker and more deliberate. In 1634, the Italian writer Giambattista Basile published a version called La Gatta Cenerentola, the Cat Cinderella. Here the heroine helps murder her first cruel stepmother, only to suffer under an even worse replacement. It is not a child's bedtime story. It is cynical, strange, and full of the moral chaos common in older folk tales. Good people are not always pure. Justice arrives through cunning as much as virtue. These early versions often reflected a harsh world where innocence alone did not keep anyone safe. Then came the version that shaped much of the modern image. In 1697, the French writer Charles Perrault published Cendrillon. He added the fairy godmother, the pumpkin carriage, the transformation scene, and most famously, the glass slipper. Whether glass came from symbolism or mistranslation is debated, but Perrault understood elegance. He was writing for aristocratic salons, where grace, fashion, manners, and royal favor mattered deeply. His Cinderella is patient, refined, forgiving, and rewarded through beauty and composure. The tale became less about raw survival and more about social polish. In the courts of Europe, charm could be power. The Brothers Grimm later offered another path in 19th century Germany. Their Aschenputtel restored some of the old brutality. The helper is not a fairy godmother, but a tree growing on the mother's grave, suggesting memory and ancestral blessing rather than whimsical magic. Birds assist the heroine. The stepsisters, desperate to fit the slipper, cut parts of their own feet. Birds then peck out their eyes as punishment for deceit. This version is moral, severe, and rooted in folklore imagery. It warns against vanity and cruelty, with a force modern audiences often forget these stories once carried. So why did Cinderella change again in the modern era? Because stories follow the needs of the age telling them. By the 20th century, mass publishing, cinema, and family entertainment demanded cleaner edges. Violence softened, sexual politics were muted, class anxieties were wrapped in romance. Then in 1950, the Walt Disney Company released Cinderella, the version that fixed the tale in global memory. Bright animation, singing animals, sparkling magic, and triumphant love replaced much of the older menace. For For post-war audiences, it offered comfort, hope, and elegance after years of hardship. Cinderella became less a survivor of household politics and more a dream of transformation. The Walt Disney Company did not invent Cinderella, but it became the loudest voice in a story centuries old. Modern critics then re-examined the tale. Some saw passivity, a heroine who waits to be chosen. Others defended her endurance, kindness under abuse, and refusal to become cruel herself. New adaptations responded by making Cinderella more active, witty, ambitious, or self-directed in many recent retellings. Rescue comes not from a prince alone, but from courage, intelligence, and the decision to leave mistreatment behind. Once again, the story changed because society changed. And perhaps that is the real secret of Cinderella. It survives because it speaks to a permanent human hunger. That humiliation is not the end. That dignity can survive degradation, and that those dismissed beside the fire may yet walk into the light. Every era reshaped the shoe, the magic, the prince, the punishment, but the ember at the center remained the same. Someone overlooked. Someone burdened, someone rising. So when you next hear of glass slippers and midnight bells, remember that beneath the glitter lies a tale older than kingdoms, older than Europe, older perhaps than writing itself. A story carried from hearth to hearth, changing faces but never losing its hunger for justice. Thank you for joining me tonight on Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. If you enjoyed this journey into the true shadows behind familiar tales, please subscribe and return again soon. There are many more stories still waiting in the ashes.